What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the words family sedan? Probably 4 doors. A spacious trunk. A comfortable and roomy interior. And most importantly, a practical engine, but not a powerful one. Honestly, I'd say not powerful at all. And that's exactly what the Opel Omega A was in the 90s, a completely normal, practical, and comfortable family car. But in 1990, the mad engineers from Lotus Cars decided that this car needed a small upgrade. And after that, a car was born that completely blurred the line between a family sedan and a racing machine. A car that some politicians wanted to ban, a car that the police were afraid of, and a car that only the truly insane were willing to drive. A sedan that could reach almost 300 kilometers per hour. A sedan that made even Ferrari and Porsche stop and think, are we really the ones making fast cars? Today, you'll find out how an ordinary family sedan became one of the fastest cars of its time, why the engineers from Lotus were responsible for developing this project, how the engine was created that allowed the sedan to reach nearly 300 kilometers per hour, why this car caused a massive scandal across Europe and even scared politicians, and how the Lotus Omega eventually became one of the insane cars in the history of Opel. You're watching Jesco, and this is the full story of the Lotus Omega. Enjoy the video. By the late 1980s, Opel was producing one of the most typical sedans of its time, the Opel Omega A. It was a large, comfortable, and practical car. A spacious interior, a big trunk, soft suspension, and calm, everyday engines. A car people bought for work, family, and long highway drives. The Omega held an important place in Opel's lineup. It sat between compact models and more expensive executive cars. For many buyers, it was the perfect balance. Big enough, comfortable enough, and not too expensive. It was simply a good family sedan, designed to do its job on the road. And no one really saw it as a base for a performance car. Well, almost no one. At the time, Opel was owned by General Motors. And what is General Motors known for? Exactly, some pretty crazy ideas. They looked at the Omega and someone had a thought. What if we take this calm family car and turn it into something sporty? Everyone looked at each other and went, yeah, that's actually a great idea. Let's do it. And with that idea, General Motors went to Lotus. Why Lotus? Because at that time, GM didn't just own Opel, it also owned Lotus Cars. Lotus was well known for its engineering expertise. The company specialized in lightweight, highly responsive cars, and often helped other manufacturers develop chassis and performance versions of their vehicles. So when the idea came up to build a faster version of the Opel Omega A, the project was handed over to Lotus engineers. At first, the task seemed pretty simple. Take a regular Omega and make it faster, improve the engine a bit, adjust the suspension, and sharpen the handling. But very quickly, it became clear that the project was going way beyond that, and that Lotus might have taken the phrase "slightly upgraded" a bit too seriously. The engineers started going deeper and deeper into the car's design. They reinforced the engine, reworked the suspension, redesigned the drivetrain and braking system. And the further the project went, the less the car resembled a regular Omega. At some point, it became obvious. This was no longer just a performance version of the Omega. This was an entirely new car. And in the end, it would be called the Lotus Omega. Well, in most of Europe at least. In the UK, it was sold as the Lotus Carlton, but that's not really the important part. Because the most important part of this project was the engine. For the base, the engineers took an inline-six engine that was already used in the Opel Omega A. In its standard form, it was a calm 3.0-liter engine, perfectly fine for a comfortable sedan, but definitely not for something close to a supercar. So the engineers at Lotus Cars decided to seriously rework it. The displacement was increased to 3.6 liters. The internals were reinforced, and the engine was prepared to handle much higher stress. But the most important change was the addition of two Garrett turbochargers. With the turbos, the engine started producing around 377 horsepower and over 560 millimeters of torque. At the time, those were numbers you'd expect from expensive sports cars, not from a family sedan, especially not from Opel. But with that kind of power came a new problem. The standard Omega transmission simply wouldn't be able to handle it. So they went with a 6-speed manual gearbox from the Chevrolet Corvette ZR1. And that alone sounded pretty insane. A German family sedan with British engineering and an American transmission. A true Frankenstein of the automotive world. But the engine and gearbox were only part of the story. To make sure the car could actually handle all that power, the engineers had to rework almost everything else. The suspension was completely retuned to keep the car stable at high speeds. Stiffer anti-roll bars, new dampers, reinforced chassis components. Everything was built to handle serious performance. The braking system was also heavily upgraded. The car received large ventilated disc brakes that could withstand repeated high-speed braking. The exterior had to change as well. To fit wider wheels and improve stability, the body was slightly widened. It got flared arches, revised bumpers, and larger wheels. And yet, despite all these changes, the Lotus Omega still looked surprisingly subtle. If you didn't know what you were looking at, you could easily mistake it for a regular Opel sedan. And that's exactly what made it so special. Because under that calm and understated exterior was a car that could compete with real sports cars. 0 to 100 kilometers per hour took about 5 seconds, and the top speed reached around 280 kilometers per hour. That was the level of Ferrari and Porsche at the time. Except this was a 4-door family sedan from Opel. Almost like it wasn't supposed to exist in the first place, but it did. And when the Lotus Omega hit the roads, the reaction across Europe was unexpected. The problem wasn't that the car was too slow. The problem was that it was too fast. In the early 90s, most cars on European roads had a top speed of around 200 to 220 kilometers per hour. Even many sports cars rarely exceeded 250 kilometers per hour, as manufacturers often limited them electronically. But the Lotus Omega could reach around 280 kilometers per hour without much trouble. For a 4-door family sedan, that sounded almost absurd. In fact, in terms of top speed, it could compete with cars like the Ferrari Testarossa and the Porsche 911 Turbo 964. And because of that, a real scandal started to build in the press. Some British politicians began asking a very simple question. Why would an ordinary person need a car capable of nearly 300 kilometers per hour? Newspapers started publishing articles suggesting that a car like this could be dangerous on public roads. Another issue that was widely discussed had to do with the police. In the early 90s, most police cars in Europe were fairly standard vehicles. Cars like the BMW 5 Series E34, Ford Sierra, or Volvo 240. Their top speed was usually somewhere around 210 to 230 kilometers per hour. And just to remind you, the Lotus Omega could reach around 280 kilometers per hour, which led to a very simple conclusion. If a car like this showed up on the Autobahn and the driver decided to go flat out, a standard police car simply wouldn't be able to catch it. And because of that, the discussions around this car became even more intense. Despite all the noise in the press and all the debates about its speed, the Lotus Omega still made it to the market. But it was never a mass production car. Production numbers were very limited. Fewer than 1,000 units were built, which was extremely low even for the early 90s. There were several reasons for that. First, the car was expensive. Its price was significantly higher than a regular Opel Omega A, putting it close to real sports cars. Second, the project was never meant to be massive in the first place. For Opel, it was more of a demonstration, a way to show that even a regular family sedan could be turned into one of the fastest cars of its time. And yeah, they absolutely nailed that. And that's where the story of the Lotus Omega essentially comes to an end. The car was produced for a short period, and within a few years, production was stopped. The project remained a rare episode in Opel's history. But because of its unusual concept, it eventually became a legend. A sedan that looked almost ordinary on the outside, but could compete with real sports cars of its time. A car that proved something very simple. Sometimes the most interesting machines appear when engineers are allowed to step outside the usual rules. And that's exactly why the Lotus Omega is still remembered today as one of the craziest and most unique sedans of the 1990s. Thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed deep dives into automotive history like this, support the channel, like the video, subscribe, and write in the comments which car or person from the automotive world you would like to see in the next episode. Love cars and appreciate them. And I'm not saying goodbye, because we'll see each other in the next video.